Kurtop here, and these are 100 finds from the past that changed the world forever. Glass brain. A unique find, and the only one of its kind, was discovered by archaeologists during their excavations in Italy. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD, it was a disaster for a huge number of people. The Roman cities of Pompeii, Herculaneum, and Stabiae were completely covered with lava and volcanic ash. Archaeologists are still excavating here trying to find something interesting. This time they were lucky. They found a real human glass brain. The thermal energy released during the eruption was 500 times greater than that released during the explosion of the atomic bomb over Hiroshima. The remains of a 25-year-old man from Herculaneum who died in the eruption of Mount Vesuvius were discovered in the 1960s. His body was found in a small room in the College of Augustus, a structure dedicated to the Emperor Octavian Augustus. The guy's body was on the bed, and judging by his posture, he was sleeping at the time of death. To conduct their research and study of ancient artifacts, researchers have to study everything bit by bit. Archaeologists, without hesitation, decided to open the guy's skull and found inside a piece of glass into which the brain had turned. No similar glazing was observed in other parts of the body. The analysis showed that the material in the skull is indeed a human brain. Characteristic fatty acids were found in the glass fragments. They could not get into the skull from the outside. There were no traces of them nearby. According to the charred remains of a tree, scientists found that the temperature in this place reached 520 degrees C. The fat in the man's body literally ignited, and the soft tissues evaporated. After that, the temperature around it dropped sharply, which led to the glazing of the remains of the brain. Light men turned into a spongy mass, which was also not observed in other remains. Scientists have already seen a similar situation with the lungs in the victims of more modern tragic events, such as the fires in Dresden and Hamburg during World War II. Let's move on from the glass brain to glass tools. Mystery of the Benin bronze. An unusual discovery was made by archaeologists in Nigeria. Scientists have discovered that African craftsmen made Benin bronze from German ore. The Benin bronze is a large collection of 3,000 brass figurines found in Nigeria in 1897. British soldiers captured them and took them to Britain. For a long time, scientists thought that the figurines were made from melted-down rings that were used as money in the slave trade. But a recent study showed that most of the figurines are made from ore found in Germany in the Rhineland. African metalworkers made figurines in the 16th and 19th centuries. Scientists analyzed the metal rings that Europeans traded for gold, ivory, and slaves in Africa. The researchers compared these rings and the Benin bronze and found that they were made from the same ore. This discovery has helped scholars better understand the history of the slave trade and learn more about how Europeans influenced African art. Now, the largest collection of Benin bronzes is in the British Museum in London. Nigeria asked to return these works of art back to their homeland. Now let's think together whether European museums will return ancient artifacts back to Africa. You can write your opinion in the comments below the video. Ancient invoice in Jerusalem. Imagine the ancient city of Jerusalem over 2,000 years ago. This is the time when the Roman Empire ruled the world. It was here on the main street of Old Jerusalem that scientists found an unusual stone. There were strange symbols and words on the stone. It turned out that this is an ancient invoice, a paper receipt of our time. The archaeologists were delighted. After all, this is the first such item from those distant times found right in Jerusalem. Why is it so important? Imagine what secrets this invoice can reveal. It could tell us about how people lived, what they bought, what their customs were. According to Professor Anna Evans, it is a simple object, but it reflects the daily life of the ancient inhabitants of Jerusalem. It is these little things that give us the opportunity to look into the past and see how our distant ancestors lived. This stone tablet was found in an old tunnel dug out in the 19th century. It was carved into a piece of limestone that was once part of an ancient funerary chest called an ossuary. Professor David Cohen, an expert on the history of ancient Jerusalem, says, "This find gives us valuable information about the commercial activities and economy of Jerusalem at that time. The names and numbers on the tablet indicate financial transactions, perhaps even modern forms of accounting and trade. Each new find in the city of David helps us to better understand the history of this holy place." Swamp people in Europe. Throughout Europe, archaeologists have found hundreds of mummified people in swamps. The first finds of this kind even scared archaeologists because the preservation of the deceased was amazing. However, later scientists were able to understand how the process of mummification takes place in the marshland. At the same time, the researchers realized that all the people buried in the swamps were victims of ritual murders. Scientists have studied more than 1,000 swamp people found throughout Europe. Fragments of skeletons and bones, skin, and soft tissues were studied in detail. Forensic experts found traces of cuts and stab wounds on all the remains. Wounds were not inflicted with the intent to quickly kill a person. All injuries were inflicted with a specific purpose. Animal bones and weapons were also found nearby. All this points to ritual killings and offerings. Ritual killings and burials in swamps date back to 5000 BC. At least at the moment, these were the oldest finds. Archaeologists found the oldest swamp mummies in Scandinavia. The earliest ones date back to the Middle Ages, but they look more like an accident than a sacrifice. Such a mummification process is considered natural and the most accessible, so to speak. If a person falls into a swamp and drowns, then nature will do everything itself. And next I will tell you about the mummy more usual in our understanding. Tomb of the Magician. In Saqqara, the necropolis of ancient Memphis, archaeologists have discovered the tomb of the royal physician Teti Nebfu, who lived about 4,000 years ago. According to the surviving inscriptions on the walls and sarcophagus, it has been established that he served under the pharaoh Pepi II and held many titles: chief physician of the palace, chief dentist, director of medicinal plants, priest and magician of the goddess Selket. Since Selket patronized dangerous creatures with poison, scientists believe that Teti Nebfu knew how to treat poisonous bites. Despite the fact that the tomb was partially looted, its walls have been preserved in excellent condition and are decorated with bright paintings, scenes of offerings, a false door, ritual images. In addition to royal burials, burials of royal officials, including associates and servants of Pepi II, were previously found in Saqqara. Recently, several stone sarcophagi with hieroglyphs dedicated to the gods of Upper and Lower Egypt were also excavated there. According to experts, the splendor of Teti Nebfu's final resting place speaks to the high status of healing and magic at that time. The Egyptians had deep knowledge of anatomy, knew how to treat serious illnesses, and considered words and rituals to be as important as medicines. Creepy puzzle. Researchers have discovered that in prehistoric times, people around the world deliberately amputated fingers as part of religious rituals. This follows from an analysis of cave art dating back to 25,000 years ago in Spain and France, which shows the imprints of human hands with missing fingers. It had previously been suggested that such defects could be the result of medical problems or creative vision. However, according to a group of scientists, these people may have deliberately cut off their fingers in a bid for supernatural help. Interestingly, such rituals were common in various cultures and on all continents. For example, the Dani people of New Guinea still practice similar rituals, amputating the fingers of women after the death of loved ones. This confirms the hypothesis about the existence of similar rituals in the Paleolithic. Handprints with missing fingers have been found not only in Europe but also in Africa, Australia, North and South America, South Asia, and Southeast Asia, indicating that the practice is widespread. How did the first paper money appear? Long ago, during the time of the ancient Phoenicians, trading was a difficult business. To facilitate the exchange of goods, they came up with the idea of using coins as a universal medium of exchange. However, the coins were heavy and the slaves carried them using special handles. Then the Chinese came on the scene with a revolutionary idea. Around the 1st century BC, they came up with leather banknotes. They were made from the skin of white deer and marked with special marks. They could be used for purchases anywhere in the empire, and refusing to accept them cost a life. These leather money became the progenitors of paper bills that we know today. Around the 800s, the Chinese decided to try to create paper money using the woodcut technique, which is a method of engraving wood and imprinting on paper. But this flying money, as they were nicknamed, was not immediately taken seriously. After all, a paper bill could easily fly away with a breath of wind. Initially, these paper money were used as guarantees for debt obligations, but over time they have become a full-fledged means of payment. Paper money made trading much more convenient. Merchants no longer had to carry heavy coins, and the metal could be used for other important uses. This new flying money was more like checks and was used for large transactions. In just a few decades, paper money has evolved from a credit certificate to a full-fledged means of payment, becoming what we call paper money today. Europe at that time was still immersed in the Middle Ages, but the idea of the Chinese was so breakthrough that it spread all over the world. And so in 1601, Sweden became the first European country to print and put into circulation paper money. Thus began the history of paper money, which we know and use today. Pristine tomb. Just 30 kilometers from Cairo, archaeologists have found an ancient, intact tomb which is already 4,400 years old. This amazing discovery was made in the famous Saqqara necropolis. The tomb was built for a high-ranking priest who served with the pharaoh of the 5th dynasty and his family. One can understand that his life was full. The walls depict people who make wine, play musical instruments, sail in boats, and hunt. The building of the tomb is amazing. Its interior is decorated with large painted statues and impressive inscriptions that reveal the names of the wife and mother of the priest. Archaeologists have already begun to explore the 5 burial shafts inside the tomb, and we have yet to learn much about ancient life in Egypt. Prehistoric ostrich egg omelet. I have already talked about ancient dinosaur eggs more than once. I spoke about chicken eggs, but how could I miss the most ancient ostrich eggs? Israeli archaeologists found 8 ostrich eggs in the sand dunes of Nitzana in the Negev. Their age and preservation is amazing, from about 4,000 to 7,500 years. If they were kept in the refrigerator, then we would have the opportunity to cook the most ancient ostrich egg omelet. More than 5,000 years ago, there was a camp of ancient nomads. Archaeologists have found flint and stone tools, burnt stones, and shards of pottery. But the most important find is ostrich eggs. The dry climate of this region has helped preserve artifacts to this day. Until the 19th century, there were many wild ostriches in this region. It was a natural habitat for them. Ostrich eggs have been an important raw material and food source throughout their existence. Multiple finds testify to this. One ostrich egg replaces 25 chicken eggs. With such an omelet, you can feed a huge family and saturate them with all the useful minerals. It is interesting that archaeologists found a lot of ostrich eggshells, but they did not come across ostrich bones. Most likely, people in ancient times avoided direct contact with ostriches and preferred only stolen eggs for food. This find of 8 eggs supports the hypothesis that people deliberately brought eggs here and cooked them on a fire. However, not only sand helps to preserve artifacts in their original form. Treasure of spices on a sunken ship. Despite the terrible tragedies and terrible events of the past, archaeologists can now study the ancient world. Off the coast of Sweden, archaeologists have found the ship Gribshunden, which sank here in 1495. The Danish king Johan planned to make a deal with the Swedish ruler Sten Sture the Elder that would give him complete control over Sweden, as he had previously done with Norway, creating a unified Scandinavian kingdom. However, after landing, the ship caught fire and sank, which was a great loss. It was filled with goods worthy of a rich and powerful ruler. For the first time, the wreckage of the ship was discovered in the 1960s, but then archaeologists were not able to study in detail all the artifacts found deep underwater. The first serious research began in 2019, and the most valuable find were containers with well-preserved plant material, containing about 3,000 samples. Scientists were able to identify medieval spices among them: nutmeg, cloves, mustard, dill, saffron, ginger, peppercorns, and almonds. In that era, spices from Southeast Asia were extremely expensive in Europe since the Ottoman Empire blocked the way to them. Also on board were less exotic foods such as dried blackberries, raspberries, grapes, and flax. In addition to them, henbane was found, which in the past was used for medicinal purposes, and now it is one of the most poisonous plants in nature. The plant samples were in excellent condition due to the unique conditions at the location where the ship was found, a cold and low salinity part of the Baltic Sea. From precious spices, I will move on to a treasure in a more familiar sense for us. 1,050-year-old mysterious building. Today I will tell you about the great Ottonian Dynasty, which about 1,000 years ago ruled in the area that is now known as Germany. Recall the lessons of history? So right under our feet, secrets are buried that literally stun us. The Ottons were a powerful family that had roots in Saxony-Anhalt and were busy building churches, monasteries, and castles throughout the region. And today our brave archaeologists are hard at work, digging up the earth to bring to light the secrets of this dynasty. And one of these projects in Altenburg-Großwangen has discovered amazing finds. There, underground, archaeologists discovered two huge castles, the main one and the outer one protected by moats and ramparts. These are exactly the same ones that were built during the Ottonian dynasty. And here's the most interesting thing. The main castle was protected in a way that was usually done only in the most important castles of that time. It was a separate, powerful wall which is already more than 1,000 years old. According to Felix Biermann, the scientist who led the excavations, Altenburg is a real mystery. There is an assumption that they plan to create a new base for management here, but something went wrong. In addition to the wall, archaeologists have found many artifacts: small houses, stone and clay ovens, ceramics, animal bones, knives, spears, and much more. These were some amazing secrets kept by the land near Altenburg, which is located just 240 kilometers southwest of Berlin. Meteor finds in tombs. Even 2,000 years before the beginning of the Iron Age, the Egyptians had already learned how to work with meteoric iron. In ancient times, the sky was clear and our ancestors were guided by the stars and followed the falling meteorites. When meteors fell without burning up in the atmosphere, meteorites were obtained, space rocks. Scientists have confirmed that the 3 small beads found in the tomb were used in jewelry in 3200 BC and were made from iron that comes from meteorites. The ancient Egyptians pierced holes in it in the same way as they did with other precious stones. Then they created precious necklaces. Interestingly, meteorites were as valuable to them as precious stones and metals.
Mummified teen mom. Archaeologists have examined the mummified remains of a young mother who died in childbirth more than 1,500 years ago and discovered shocking details. 2 fetuses were found in the pelvic area and in the chest. This discovery is amazing and terrifying at the same time. The mummy of a teenage girl who died during childbirth in ancient Egypt was found in the Karga Oasis at the El Bagawat Cemetery in 1908. The body is treated with salt, which corresponds to the ancient Egyptian practice of mummification. At first, archaeologists assumed that the girl died from complications during childbirth. However, a CT scan showed a second fetus in the chest, indicating a twin pregnancy. Particularly disturbing was the discovery that one of the fetuses was missing a head. The research revealed that the baby's head was stuck in the mother's pelvis, which led to his decapitation during childbirth. This is the first known case in Egypt. It is assumed that the embalmers may not have known about the twins and forgot to remove the second fetus. This study highlights the dangers of pregnancy and childbirth during this era. The ancient Egyptians regarded birth with deep respect, as seen in spells against twin pregnancy.
Canteen of ancient Sumerians. On the territory of Iraq, in the ancient city of Lagash, archaeologists have found the remains of an ancient public dining room. And more than 5,000 years ago, there was a full-fledged indoor building where chefs prepared a large amount of food, and local workers or ordinary residents came here to eat. Maybe it was even free for them. The researchers found something similar to a clay refrigerator, benches, an oven, and the remains of dishes, where food was even preserved. Finding the tavern is actually a big discovery. This tells us that there was a middle class of people in this region. In ancient Lagash, in addition to the elite and slaves, there were ordinary hard workers who could come to the tavern after a working day and drink beer with a piece of meat or fish. The area of the city of Lagash is 450 hectares. It was one of the largest settlements in southern Iraq in the 3rd millennium BC. In addition to the dining room, archaeologists found a pottery shop with 6 ceramic kilns, a residential building that had a kitchen and a bath, and what looked like a shop. Metal men. Back in 1719, in the usual mining town of Falun in Sweden, everything went on as usual, until the miners who came on shift stumbled upon a strange find. It was a human body. The young man looked as if he had just died. In general, corpses are a common part of life. They do not surprise anyone. But this dead man seemed to be both flesh and metal. It was as if every millimeter of his body had been treated with something and applied the thinnest layer of metal. This was beyond the power of even a skilled craftsman, because every single hair on his body was covered with metal.
The management of the mine did not know what to do with the unusual find. The corpse was exhibited in a local museum, whose visitors took the unusual exhibit as a miracle, believing that the man was metal during his lifetime, almost like a Tin Woodman or Terminator. One day, the grandchildren brought an elderly lady to the museum. She stood in front of the exhibit for a while, clutching her chest because she recognized her fiancé, Mats Israelson, in the find. It's been about 40 years since they last met. The guy was in a hurry to go on a date with the bride, but he never showed up at her place. They searched for Mats for some time. Gradually, the parents calmed down and reconciled. Friends forgot about him. The girl married another guy. Probably on the way, he met criminals who killed him and threw the corpse into the mine. The deceased should have been buried, but the local authorities realized that they could make money on it. There were a huge number of people wishing to visit the museum, and tourists came from neighboring countries. As they say, money has no smell, but the exhibit kinda does. Under the action of air, the metal layer began to thin and evaporate, and the organic matter started simply decomposing. In 1749, the body was buried, but after 10 years, they dug it up again and returned it to its original place. Only in the 30s was he finally buried forever, leaving a wax copy in the museum. But it turns out that the victim of an accidental murder is not the only such case. There were other finds which were a combination of organic matter and metal. In science, this phenomenon is known as pseudomorphism. This is such an effect when one minerals replace others with the preservation of external forms. It is problematic to reproduce it in the laboratory. It is too expensive, time-consuming, and pointless. The case with Mats went down in history precisely because of the scale of the process that engulfed the whole human body, and not the remains of a small animal, insect, or shell.
Faces on stone. A drought in the Brazilian region has caused water levels in the Amazon River to reach record lows, leading to the discovery of faces and other figures engraved on ancient stone that is more than 2,000 years old. These petroglyphs, including images of animals and other natural forms, were found on the banks of the Rio Negro at an archaeological site known as Ponto das Lajes, Place of the Slabs. Researchers estimate that the paintings are between 1,000 and 2,000 years old. The stones, in addition to images of faces and water, also have grooves, indicating that the site was used to create stone tools. Archaeologists discovered 25 groups of engravings on one rock. The find indicates that this place was used for sharpening various tools. In addition, fragments of ceramics were found at this site. Although Ponto das Lajes is recognized as an archaeological site, the petroglyphs have not yet been studied. What other secrets do you think the Amazon is hiding? Share your thoughts in the comments.
Victim of the curse of Pompeii. An unusual phenomenon is happening in the Pompeii Archaeological Park. Tourists are returning stolen artifacts and asking for forgiveness, believing that a curse has fallen on them after the theft. One of the last letters received by Gabriel Zuchtriegel, the director of the park, aroused great interest. The woman in the letter apologized for taking the stones from Pompeii and talked about her illness, breast cancer, which she was diagnosed with a year after the visit. She admitted that she did not know about the curse and asked to return the stones to their historical place. Zuchtriegel published a photo of the letter on social networks, noting that the stones had returned home and wished the sender good luck. He stressed that the theft of artifacts is a crime that the park is required to report to authorities. According to Zuchtriegel, hundreds of similar letters with apologies and stories about the curse are being received. Many claim that after the theft of artifacts from Pompeii, misfortunes befell them, illnesses, and financial difficulties. In 2020, a Canadian woman returned mosaic tiles, an amphora, and a fragment of ceramics that she had stolen 15 years ago. In the letter, she spoke about 2 cases of breast cancer and financial problems. Nicole explained that she wanted to own a unique piece of history, but now believes that the artifacts contain negative energy. What do you think it was? Did these artifacts really have the magical power of a curse? Or was it karma that overtook the plunderers of antiquity? Write your opinion in the comments under the video.
The ominous Cemetery of the Revenants. The next find may scare you a little. In the central part of Italy, archaeologists have excavated in the cemetery. In fact, this is a common practice in the world of archaeology. But not all cemeteries are 1,600 years old, and not all of them are associated with legends about revenants. So, in local folklore, they called the risen from the graves of the dead.
I wanted to say that in ancient times, people were more superstitious than in our time, but I would most likely be mistaken. There have always been superstitious people, and human fear has always forced people to commit crazy acts. So in ancient Italy, people believed that the dead could rise from the graves, and so that it doesn't happen, the deceased should be buried and a huge stone should be placed on top of him. I talked about a similar find in Denmark in one of my previous videos. So in Italy, in an ancient cemetery, the remains of children were found whose bodies were crushed by stones. Some were buried with stones in their mouths. Archaeologists believe that this was part of some ancient ritual. They believed that the dead could become revenants. We know them better as zombies. Another evidence of this ritual is the remains of puppies, which were brought to the cemetery and buried with the children. Scientists have already managed to conduct a number of studies and concluded that most children died of malaria, and most likely it was this disease that caused fear in people, and it seemed to them that a person could be resurrected. In those days, Christianity was gaining popularity in this region, but this did not stop people from believing in the uprising of the dead. There was a fear of the undead, both among pagans and Christians. At the same time, many believed that witches could use revenants for their own selfish purposes. As I understand it, 1,500 years ago, there were no dull moments in Italy. And the next final story for today will be about a real Thumbelina. The Blue Lotus Mystery. There are legends about this beautiful flower, and it grows only in the rivers and lakes of Africa and Asia. The blue lotus, or as it is also called the Egyptian lotus or sacred lotus, has beautiful blue petals and has healing properties. This flower was very popular in ancient Egypt. The Egyptians believed that the water lily helped in wires to the afterlife and communicating with the gods. Also, it is mentioned in the Egyptian Book of the Dead and was considered a symbol of immortality. One of the reasons why the flower was so popular in ancient times is its ability to influence the mind and behavior of a person, just as it expands the scope of perception. In short, it is a powerful hallucinogen. Any ancient Egyptian priest was familiar with the magical powers of the blue lotus. One of the best-known such natural hallucinogens is ayahuasca, which is still used today by the indigenous peoples of the Amazon and Brazilian shamans when they conduct religious rites. Another huge plus of the blue lotus is that it does not need special care and conditions. In ancient Egypt, medicine, magic, and religion were very closely related to each other. To be honest, although people today have become more educated and no longer so wild, many still believe that diseases can be cured with the help of some kind of magical rituals and completely refuse to visit hospitals. The first mention of this flower, archaeologists noticed in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and after they discovered the Ebers Papyrus, where they found almost 1,000 different recipes and methods of treatment using the blue lotus. It is a powerful aphrodisiac and was often used by the elite at secret meetings in temples, adding it to sacred wines. Its aroma is so beautiful that on the walls of the tombs you can see images of people who inhale it. The blue lotus can be found in erotic papyri. Pyramids of Meroe. Everyone knows the huge pyramids of Egypt, but Sudan has the largest collection of these amazing ancient structures. What a twist, huh? Sudan is often associated with civil wars and disease, but this country is a treasure trove for lovers of culture and history. At the top of the list are the pyramids of Meroe. They were built in Nubia, one of the first civilizations of ancient Africa, and served as a place of eternal rest for the last pharaohs of the ancient city of Meroe. Over 200 pyramids, located on 3 sites, were built as royal graves for 40 kings and queens who ruled the kingdom of Nubia Kush for more than 1,000 years. This period is known as the Meroitic period. Unlike the pyramids of Giza, the pyramids of Meroe are built of granite and sandstone and are characterized by small bases and steep slopes. Many artifacts are found inside the tombs: ceramics, glass, quivers with arrows. Even despite the destruction, the pyramids retain their magic, especially at dawn and dusk. Bas-reliefs depicting scenes from ancient Egyptian mythology indicate a strong cultural influence. Unusual burial in Sweden. In Halmstad, Sweden, archaeologists discovered an unusual burial that attracted attention for its uniqueness. The remains of a tall man were found in the grave, buried with a rare artifact, a 1.2-meter long sword. The find indicates that the deceased may have been an influential person. During excavations at the site of the former monastery, which operated from the late 15th century until 1531, researchers discovered 49 graves. But this one stood out. A tall man whose height reached almost 2 meters lay with a sword, which is rare for medieval burials. Of particular interest was the decoration on the sword, inlaid crosses made of precious metals. This find indicates the noble origin or high status of the deceased. 2 more graves were found nearby belonging to an adult woman and a man, highlighting the site's importance as a burial place for dignitaries during the Franciscan era. Halmstad, located southwest of Stockholm, was an important city within the Kingdom of Denmark.
Echoes of an ancient battle. In Andalusia, archaeologists have discovered a unique artifact associated with Julius Caesar and the ancient Ibero-Roman city of Ipsca. The find is a lead sling ball on which the name of Caesar and the name of Ipski are abbreviated. This is the first time in the Iberian Peninsula that such a clear inscription of the name of Caesar and the name of a Roman city from Spain has been found on such a shell. The discovery was made thanks to the work of experts from various research institutions in Spain. The ball was found in the Montilla region in Andalusia, where, according to historians, the famous Battle of Munda could have taken place in 45 BC, where Caesar encountered the sons of Pompeii. The ball itself is shaped like an acorn with pointed ends, measures 4.5 centimeters in length, 2 centimeters in width, and 1.7 centimeters in height, and weighs about 71 grams. It has Ipskie and Kes clearly engraved on it. This artifact is an example of the ancient Greek and Roman practice of inscribing metal-slying projectiles, known as glandes inscripti. To create these projectiles, clay molds with notches were used, which made it possible to obtain relief inscriptions. These inscriptions usually contain the name of the manufacturer, military leaders, legions, or locations.
Idol of Gorbunovsky Peat Bog. The Gorbunovsky Peat Bog, located in the Urals, is an outstanding monument of the Paleolithic and Bronze Age, becoming the first archaeological discovery of its kind in Russia. On the site of the modern swamp there was once a lake, on the shore of which people built platforms, leaving behind dwellings, tools, and vessels. Over time, the area became swampy, but this did not stop people from settling the territory, which is confirmed by finds of coal chips. Among the unique artifacts found here was a boomerang and a wooden idol carved from a pine trunk with a disproportionately long body and a detailed head, making it different from other finds. This idol, discovered under the wall of the excavation, is now kept in the Nizhny Tagil Museum. In addition, an idol head with primitive processing and another idol with a simplified body shape were found, both of which are now in the collection of the State Historical Museum. These artifacts demonstrate particular care in the manufacture of objects of everyday use and accuracy in depicting the forms of animals and birds. Anthropomorphic images, however, are made crudely and schematically, which may be associated with ancient beliefs about the depiction of the spirits of the dead. It is assumed that due to the fear of connecting a spirit with its image, wooden sculptures were made conventional and deliberately unrealistic. This approach to creating human images testifies to the deeply rooted traditions and beliefs of the ancient inhabitants of the Urals.
The oldest mummy in the ruins of an unknown city. In Egypt, archaeologists made 2 interesting discoveries at once: an unknown city of the era of the Roman Empire and a mummy completely covered in gold. It is currently the oldest mummy found in the country. If you didn't know, it has recently been illegal in Britain to call a mummy. Now it's a mummified person. Therefore, be more tolerant of the mummified personality of Tutankhamun and others, please. The ruins of the ancient city were discovered on the east bank of the Nile, not far from Luxor. In addition to the buildings, the researchers found metallurgical workshops with various utensils, 2 dovecotes, Roman copper, and bronze coins. Approximate age of buildings: 2nd and 3th century AD, the times of the late Roman Empire. The uniqueness of the city is that usually archaeologists manage to find temples and tombs, and here the whole city. But in the Saqqara necropolis near Cairo, archaeologists found a mummy in a limestone sarcophagus, which is 4,300 years old. At the moment, it is the most complete and oldest mummy found in Egypt. And as we already know, if the mummy is covered with gold, then it did not belong to an ordinary person. The mummy has a name, Gekashepes. In addition to this tomb, 4 more of about the same age were found. Scientists preliminarily consider that they belong to the highest palace officials, and one of them belongs to a judge and writer named Fetek. In order not to offend mummies, do not forget that these are mummified remains or a mummified person. In recent years, a lot of interesting and fascinating finds have been found in Egypt. In terms of the scale of the discoveries, this is reminiscent of the discovery of the tomb of Tutankhamun at the beginning of the last century. All these events will raise the level of tourism in the country to an even greater one. While archaeologists are clearing their finds of sand, I suggest you see the place where the ancient Sumerians ate. Ancient Roman dildo. This find was discovered back in 1992, and for some reason, then it was not possible to immediately determine what it is. As a result, 30 years later, archaeologists and scientists again decided to study this artifact, which was discovered in the ancient Roman fortified military camp of Vindolanda. It turned out to be the oldest Roman toy for adults. We know from Greek and Roman poetry, Greek and Roman art, that they used dildos. But until that time, archaeologists had not found a single example. After analysis using a 3D scan of the object, it was found that both ends were smooth compared to the rest of the object. It was previously believed that the artifact was a darning tool, or it was used as a pestle to grind ingredients during cooking or medical procedures. Scientists also recalled that in ancient times, phallic-shaped objects were often used to scare away evil spirits. The researchers hope that the find from Vindolanda will serve as an impetus to search for similar items in other collections. In the meantime, it is on display at the Vindolanda Museum. The oldest inscription in Cyrillic. Imagine you are digging in the ground and you come across something very, very old. What would you do? But the scientists who recently worked in the ruins of a fortress in Bulgaria were simply delighted. They found a breastplate that is over 1,100 years old. Can you imagine how many years ago that was? And what's especially interesting is that this breastplate has an inscription on it, and it may be the oldest example of Cyrillic, one of the written alphabets we use today. This inscription is engraved on a lead plate. I think someone wore it on their chest to ward off all troubles and evil. The inscription mentions two people, Pavel and Dimitar. Who they are, no one knows for sure. Perhaps Dimitar served in the fortress and Pavel was his relative. Apparently, this inscription was made during the reign of Tsar Simeon I, who ruled Bulgaria from 893 to 927. Most likely, the plate got into the fortress between 916 and 927. Prior to this, the oldest texts in Cyrillic were those that were written in 921. So this bib is something special. Perhaps scientists will soon learn more about it. Did you know that the Cyrillic alphabet originated from the Greek alphabet and additional letters were added to it for those sounds that were not in the Greek language? Cyrillic is used in many countries of Eastern Europe as well as in Central and North Asia. It was first adopted in Bulgaria as the official alphabet. Name of Jesus Christ. While studying the remains of a man from Sudan, scientists at the University of Warsaw discovered a religious tattoo with a Christian symbol. These remains were found near the Ghazali Monastery dating back to the Middle Ages. On the leg of the deceased, who passed away about 1,300 years ago, a tattoo was discovered depicting a chrisma, a monogram of the name of Jesus Christ created from the Greek letters chi and rho. In addition, the Alpha and Omega symbols were depicted nearby. This symbol first appeared in 324 AD during the reign of Emperor Constantine. Alpha and Omega are the beginning and ending letters of the Greek alphabet, symbolizing the idea of God as the beginning and end of everything. An interesting fact is that the tattoo is located on the right leg because since it is there, according to scientists, that a nail could have been nailed during the veneration of Christ. This religious marking indicates the man's Christian faith. However, it is not established whether he was a monk from the Ghazali Monastery, since his remains were found in a nearby cemetery reserved for local residents. According to the analysis, he was 35, 50 years old at the time of death. At the time, the region known as Nubia included parts of modern Egypt and Sudan, and Christianity was the main religion. Despite the fact that the remains were found 7 years ago, the unique tattoo was only recently discovered and is only the second known case of tattooing in medieval Nubia. Remains of a new species of people. At an archaeological site between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem in Israel, international researchers have discovered mysterious skull fragments that may belong to an unknown population of Homo. Discovered in 2021, the remains may be those of Nesher Ramla Homo, who lived in the region 120,000 years ago. This population, according to scientists, exchanged genes and culture with Homo sapiens.
The skull fragments include a parietal bone with archaic features not typical of Homo sapiens or Neanderthals and a lower jaw with archaic features. Scientists suggest that Nesher Ramla Homo could be an intermediate form between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. The discovery, according to paleoanthropologist Martha Lahr of the University of Cambridge, is significant because of its location and age. If confirmed, this discovery could explain the origins of other finds, such as the Lady of Taboon, discovered in 1932. Some scientists, however, have expressed doubts, suggesting other explanations, including the possibility that the fragments belong to Denisovans. Ancient sword in the river. A medieval sword was recently discovered in the depths of a Polish river, which experts say may have links to the Vikings. This sword is decorated with a mysterious inscription and is one of 8 similar artifacts found in Poland. The discovery was made during deep-sea exploration in the port of Włocławek, near Torun, a UNESCO-protected city. The sword, which had survived centuries of corrosion, was dated to the 10th century AD. This period is extremely significant for the history of Poland, linking the beginning of the formation of the state with the Piast dynasty. The sword could have witnessed the birth of the Polish nation. Historically, swords of this type are associated with northwestern Europe, suggesting Scandinavian or Frankish origin. However, the exact roots and connection to the Vikings remain a matter of debate among historians. Of particular interest is the inscription U Valfberth, found under layers of corrosion which may indicate the name Ulfbert. This name appears on swords found in northern Europe dating from the 9th to 11th centuries, adding to the mystery of the sword's history. Russian pyramids. If you haven't seen it in person, you've probably heard about the greatness of the Egyptian pyramids on the Giza Plateau. This architectural ensemble, which has delighted the world with its splendor for centuries, is considered one of the most monumental. But Russian researchers have proposed an alternative, pointing to the existence of even older pyramids in Russia, covering areas from the Kola Peninsula to the Black Sea. The first discovery of such pyramidal structures occurred on the Kola Peninsula in 2001. The dating of which indicated an age twice that of the Egyptian counterparts. Subsequent discoveries confirmed the artificial origin of these pyramids, built between 9,000 and 40,000 years ago. In 2010, researchers discovered another ancient pyramid, indicating similar construction techniques to Egyptian and Chinese structures. In the Krasnoyarsk region is Sopka Chernaya, an extinct volcano nicknamed Pyramid for its triangular shape with man-made masonry, discovered in 1993. In Rostov-on-Don, there is the Sanctuary of Arius, a unique structure that predates the Egyptian pyramids by 1,000 years and was built according to the principle of the golden ratio. Crimea is especially rich, where in 2001 7 pyramids were found located in a line between Sevastopol and Foros, supposedly 2,000 years older than the Egyptian ones. Their architecture is reminiscent of Tibetan and Mexican pyramids, indicating the existence of an ancient, advanced civilization. It's hard to believe that the Egyptian pyramids are not as ancient as we were previously told. Also, such finds confirm that the Egyptians were not the first to create such grandiose structures. Until now, humanity is racking its brains and trying to understand why people in ancient times built pyramidal structures all over the globe. Ancient Mayan football scoreboard. In Mexico, at Chichen Itza on the Yucatan Peninsula, archaeologists have found a stone disc depicting 2 people playing tlachtli, an ancient game popular in the region. This disc, weighing more than 40 kilograms, was used as a scoreboard to record the results of matches. Tlachtli, Mesoamerican ball game, was common among the peoples of Mesoamerica before the arrival of Columbus. The games were held as ritual events and were sometimes accompanied by sacrifices, but were more often played for entertainment. It is difficult to disagree that archaeologists consider tlachtli to be the ancestor of modern football. Researchers estimate the age of the plate at 1,200 years. Archaeologist Francisco Osorio Leon says such finds are very rare. Iconographic experts have identified 2 central players, one wearing a feather headdress and the other, his opponent, wearing a serpent turban, an outfit typical of pelota players, another ancient ball game estimated to be 3,000 years old. The mystery of the Basel mummy.
I already talked about this find in one of my videos, but the story has changed. In 1975, in the Swiss city of Basel, in the Barfüßer Church, the mummified remains of a woman were found, and to this day it was believed that she died of syphilis. Such conclusions were made by researchers due to the fact that a lot of mercury was found in her body. In the 18th century, syphilis was treated with mercury, hence such conclusions were made. But now it was possible to establish that the woman died from a bacterium unknown to science. The woman's name was Anna Katharina Bischoff. She was the wife of a pastor and died in 1787. Using DNA analysis, researchers even identified her descendants. One of them with a 99% probability is British politician Boris Johnson. The scientists found a new bacterium that was most abundant in brain tissue, and this correlated with the highest concentration of mercury in the brain. Most likely, the doctor in those years made a wrong diagnosis and treated her for syphilis with mercury, which greatly weakened the woman's body. In addition, she was overweight, had gallstones, and other diseases. In the 18th century, it was too humiliating to claim that a wealthy priest's widow had sexually transmitted syphilis. When people of this status died, an obituary was written about them, who the person was during his lifetime, what he did, and what he died from. There is no mention of this woman. Bischoff's diagnosis would have prevented her from using public baths or being treated in a regular hospital. As a result, the mercury with which she was treated slowed down the decomposition and turned her into a mummy. 18 years in prison and £1.2 million fine. In some countries, there are very strict rules for treasure hunters and amateur archaeologists. If, for example, you find a treasure trove or some ancient artifact and do not report it to the government, then you will face a prison or a huge fine. In our story, 2 treasure hunters received both a prison sentence and a huge fine. So, in 2019, George Powell and Leighton Davis found a treasure in Herefordshire, approximately 5th century AD. It consisted of a 9th century gold ring, a dragon head bracelet, a silver bar dating from the 5th century, a crystal pendant, and over 300 coins, some of which date back to the reign of King Alfred the Great. The treasure was valued at £3 million. However, historians consider this treasure to be priceless, which it seems to me added even more problems to amateur archaeologists. Since 1996, there has been a law in the UK that states that if you find ancient artifacts that are more than 300 years old, even one coin, you must report it to the appropriate authority. When Powell and Davis found the treasure, they decided to sell everything on the black market. They were arrested when they were selling the last batch of jewelry. They now face 8 and 10 years respectively, plus a £1.2 million fine that they must pay by this spring. If they do not pay, then their term in prison will increase by 4 and 5 years. It would seem that the laws are very harsh, but there is one nuance. If they had immediately told the government about the treasure, then after studying and evaluating the property, the country's authorities would have paid each of them £500,000 sterling. As I understand, these guys were just greedy. Buddha Iron Man. This is an amazing find that has shocked scientists around the world. This statue, about 24 centimeters high and weighing 10 kilograms, was created from a fragment of a meteorite. The specimen represents the image of the Buddhist god Vaishravana, who symbolizes protection and wealth. The origin of the statue has been carefully studied by researchers. Based on the results of the analysis, it was determined that the material for the creation was taken from the Chinga meteorite, which fell on the border of Mongolia and Siberia about 15,000 years ago. It is believed that the statue was created in the 11th century AD on the territory of Tibet. It is amazing how the ancient masters, without even suspecting the cosmic origin of the material, were able to so skillfully process and transform it into a work of art. In 1938, Ernst Schaefer's expedition, funded by Nazi Germany, discovered the statue in Tibet and brought it back to Germany. Subsequently, its origin and material remained a subject of controversy and mystery for a long time, until recent scientific research revealed its amazing history. Today, Iron Man stands not only as a majestic work of art, but also as a testament to the unique combination of nature and human artistry.
Ancient tactical defense tunnels. More than 4,000 years ago, entering the ancient stone city of Haochengzui was a real challenge. The defensive system included many layers of walls and armed inhabitants. However, the most surprising thing is the recently discovered secret underground tunnels that function as a hidden transport network. The tunnels are located at a depth of 1.5 to 6 meters. The internal dimensions of the tunnels range from 0.9 to 1.8 meters in height and about 1.2 meters in width. Some tunnels passed under the city's defensive walls, opening passages to the outside. This system strengthened the defense of the city, which was already equipped with a sophisticated defense system. Haochengzui is located on the north bank of the Hong River in Qing County, Mongolian Autonomous Region. Archaeologists first discovered the city in 2005 and began systematic excavations in 2019. Excavations at Haochengzui have revealed 3 different city gates, each with its own characteristics. A small cemetery consisting of 8 rectangular graves was discovered inside the city. Jade mask. Archaeologists have made an important discovery in the dense rainforests of Guatemala in a place called Xochcutam. They discovered a woven jade mask believed to have belonged to an unknown Mayan king who lived about 1700 years ago. This find may shed light on Mayan religious devotion and royal succession during the early Classic period. It also supports the hypothesis that members of the Maya royal families may have been enslaved by more powerful Mesoamerican dynasties. In addition to the mask, archaeologists found a skull, teeth, a skull-shaped stone box, and numerous offerings at Xochcutam, including shells, bones, and shiny pieces of jade. Alexander Tokovinin, an expert in Mayan epigraphy, helped decipher the glyphs on the bones and identified the human remains as the Itzam ruler Kokai Balam. And the deity depicted on the mask turned out to be Yax Wayab Chakak. He is the incarnation of the Maya god of storms. Worth its weight in gold. Mexican scholars recently invested 9.5 million pesos in acquiring 3 unique documents from the late 16th century. This investment opened a new page in history, providing valuable information about the period of the Spanish arrival in the lands of modern Mexico. We are talking about the Codex of San Andres Tetepilco, compiled at the turn of the 16th and 17th centuries, which vividly illustrate the events of that time, including the reign of Itzcoatl, the 4th ruler of Tenochtitlan and founder of the Aztec Empire, and the arrival of Hernán Cortés. These rare codices were purchased for the National Library of Anthropology and History through the efforts and support of individuals and organizations. A payment of 9.5 million pesos allowed them to be returned from private hands to the public domain. The analysis showed that the codices were created from amate, traditional paper made from tree bark with the use of natural dyes, which emphasizes the high skill of their creators. The authenticity of the documents was confirmed through collaboration with experts from various scientific institutions. The San Andres Tetepilco codices stand out among other artifacts because of their unique combination of indigenous traditions and European influences. Containing texts in Nahuatl and Spanish written in the Latin alphabet, this treasure provides an opportunity to delve deeper into the study and understanding of a key period in the region's history. Mystical petroglyphs. The distance from Egypt to Australia is 12,500 kilometers, however. As archaeological discoveries show, this distance was easily surmountable for ancient man. The Gosford glyphs are mysterious petroglyphs discovered in a rocky area near the city of Gosford in Australia. These images on the stone amazed researchers with their similarity to ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. The glyphs depict scenes and symbols that indicate that these images may be indicative of possible contact between ancient Australian tribes and extraterrestrial beings, or even ancient Egyptian travels to Australia. Supporters of the paleo-contact theory claim that these glyphs may be evidence that in the distant past there were interactions between various ancient cultures or even with extraterrestrial civilizations. However, here too skeptics come in and point out many inconsistencies and believe that the glyphs could have been created in the modern era, perhaps as a hoax, or are the work of local aborigines who used symbols similar to Egyptian ones. The question of the origin and authenticity of the Gosford glyphs remains open. At the moment, there is no convincing evidence confirming their antiquity or connection with extraterrestrial civilizations, which makes this find one of the most mysterious archaeological secrets of Australia. Treasures of Ghana. 2 leading British museums have agreed with the Ghanaian government to return gold artifacts stolen in the 19th century. Last May, the Asantehene, King of Ghana, met in London with the directors of the British Museum and the Victoria and Albert Museum. It was decided to transfer 32 gold exhibits taken by the British 150 years ago to Ghana for 3 years. In 1874, the British plundered the royal palace in Ghana. In 1896, another military operation took place, leading to further robberies. The museum's joint statement acknowledged that the seized items have cultural and historical significance to the Asante people and are linked to British colonial history. Items being returned include a golden peace pipe purchased at auction for £85, as well as rings, scabbards, soul discs, knives, and necklaces. The British feared that this agreement could become a precedent for the return of other items captured during the colonial wars. Personally, I am very glad that finally valuable exhibits from museums are gradually beginning to return to their homeland.
Mysterious Book of Thoth. In the world of archaeology, discoveries happen from time to time that change our understanding of the past. Today's story is the discovery of the Book of Thoth, a stunning artifact that was found in the bowels of the Luxor Temple by the famous Egyptian archaeologist Hassan Mahmud. Thoth in ancient Egyptian mythology is the god of writing, wisdom, and time. He is often depicted with the head of an ibis or as a baboon. It is believed that Thoth is the creator of hieroglyphs and numerous magical texts. The Book of Thoth is a scroll containing the prophecies and parables attributed to this god. The majestic scroll is made of high-quality papyrus and is extremely well preserved despite many centuries. But the most important thing in it is the content. In the process of studying this scroll, Hassan Mahmud discovered a mysterious message. He has knowledge hidden from the eyes. Whoever dares to read will gain the wisdom of the gods. This message seems to have been addressed to the king who owned the Luxor Temple. This artifact is incredibly valuable for archaeologists and historians. It can shed light on ancient Egyptian ideas about the world, the gods, and also show how the ancient Egyptians interacted with these deities. The Book of Thoth is incredibly mystical. The opening of the scroll was a real revelation because its content and message allowed us to look into the depths of ancient Egyptian mythology, to touch the wisdom of a great civilization whose history is still shrouded in secrets. Disguised doors in the Great Wall of China. Millions of people visit the Great Wall of China every year, but researchers continue to study it and find something new. Recently, employees of Tianjin University found 130 camouflaged doors. The trick with disappearing or passing through the Chinese wall was demonstrated by the magician David Copperfield, and it turns out there is some truth in that. The doors are so carefully disguised that they are almost invisible from the outside. And if you stand next to the wall and watch, you can see how merchants or soldiers approach the wall and disappear, or on the contrary, appear from nowhere. Previously, this effect was little studied by official history, and these doors were not given much attention. To see the hidden passages in the wall, the researchers had to shoot in high resolution. The doors fit so well into the wall that sometimes even the masonry coincided, while the passages were so large that a small herd could pass through. Previously, it was believed that there was no passage in some sections of the wall, but now we understand that there are passages everywhere. Just somewhere they are carefully disguised. Such cunning passages and the very construction of the wall, 21,000 km long, gave the Chinese a huge advantage in antiquity. Most likely, this is not the last surprise that awaits us while exploring the Great Wall of China. And now let's go to Italy to a creepy cemetery. Volcanic glass stone axes. Ethiopia is a great place for a detailed study of our distant ancestors. On the territory of this country, archaeologists have found many remains of Homo sapiens and their tools. So recently, scientists from the Sapienza University of Rome discovered in Ethiopia a huge treasure of volcanic glass products. In the valley of the Awash River, 575 obsidian artifacts were found. Their approximate age is 1.2 million years. Among the many obsidian objects, 30 stone axes 11.5 centimeters long were found. Ancient people used them for cutting, scraping, butchering, and digging. Obsidian tools have very sharp cutting edges, but volcanic glass is brittle and difficult to work without breaking. The oldest such tools in Europe were 500,000 years old, and these turned out to be much older. The mystery of Roman coins on Pirate Island.
On a mysterious uninhabited island in the Baltic Sea, archaeologists have found 2 silver coins from the time of the Roman Empire. Scientists are quite puzzled as to how the coins ended up on an island between Sweden and Estonia. Nobody knows exactly how the coins got there. Perhaps this is the case of Scandinavian traders, a shipwreck, or a Roman ship wandering north. The coins found are Roman denarius. One was minted during the time of Emperor Trajan, the other during the time of Antoninus Pius. They were the standard coins in Rome, and their name is preserved in some Latin languages, such as denaro in Italian and dinero in Spanish. Roman coins have always been valuable because of the silver they are made from. The coins may have been brought by Norwegian traders, shipwreck survivors, or by Romans on a ship, although no such records have been found. Gotska Sanden, the sandy island, is one of the most remote in the Baltic Sea. Roman coins have also been found on the larger island of Gotland. In the past, Gotska Sanden served as a pirate haven and a lighthouse island as well as a seal hunting ground. The coin finds corroborate the 19th century lighthouse keepers' stories of finding a Roman coin on the island. Scientists hope to unravel the mystery and reconstruct the history of the island, although it is likely that this mystery will never be fully solved. Church of the legendary city of Rungholt. Ready to go looking for the lost city? Not just a city, but the whole northern Atlantis. Archaeologists have made an amazing discovery in the depths of the North Sea. They found the remains of the ancient city of Rungholt, which was washed away by a powerful storm many centuries ago. And the most interesting thing they found was the stone remains of a huge church measuring 40 by 15 meters. Imagine how majestic it was. Rungholt was a large and important trading city in the Middle Ages. It was a place where thousands of people lived and worked. Fishermen, farmers, merchants, and even priests. Imagine the picture. Cozy streets full of people merrily trading and bustling around. Salt and amber were sold there, and goods were even delivered to places as far away as Spain. But alas, it all ended when on January 16th, 1362, a terrible storm wiped the city off the face of the earth. Rungholt has since become known as Northern Atlantis. By the way, a historian named Tanya Horman assures that the people in Rungholt were very rich and paid huge taxes. The Danish king Valdemar II even recorded in his books that they paid as much as 20% of their silver as a tax to the king. These were the ancient inhabitants of Rungholt, rich and prosperous until their city was swept away by nature. So guys, the next time you think of underwater cities and treasures, think of Rungholt, Northern Atlantis, and those who once lived there before the city disappeared into the depths of the sea. Chinese fortified city. Archaeologists in Henan Province, China have discovered ancient ruins of a 4,000-year-old Shia Dynasty palace. The find confirms the existence of this legendary dynasty, which was previously considered a myth. The ruins are located in Jinmi, an ancient walled city. The discovery includes the remains of a rammed earth foundation covering 17 hectares and a variety of artifacts. Researchers suggest that the foundation was part of a residential complex, including terraces, cloisters, and a central courtyard. Circular structures similar to ancient grain storage granaries are noted, providing insight into agricultural practices and grain storage during that era. This discovery greatly enhances the understanding of the culture and history of the Shia dynasty, previously known only from literary descriptions. Excavations make it possible to connect historical myths with real archaeological data, revealing new aspects of ancient China. With colored masks and golden tongues. In the historical area of Albanasa in Egypt, a team of Spanish archaeologists, led by Dr. Maite Mascoro and Dr. Esther Pons Malado from the University of Barcelona, made a significant discovery. Scientists have discovered ancient rock-cut tombs, as well as a number of valuable artifacts, allowing for a more in-depth study of the history of this region. A team of archaeologists has found tombs that date back to the Ptolemaic and Roman eras, revealing a unique burial method. One of the most amazing finds are terracotta statues of Isis Aphrodite, decorated with crowns of leaves, which are an important addition to the study of the art of that era. The excavations also uncovered Roman-era mummies adorned with gilded and colored funerary masks. An interesting feature was the discovery of golden tongues in the mouths of some mummies, which indicates ancient burial customs designed to keep the deceased capable of conversation in the afterlife. Adel Lokasa, head of the Central Authority of Antiquities of Middle Egypt, stressed the importance of finding a ruined building with unique designs depicting plants, vines, and animals. These images provide valuable insight into the culture and life in Albanus in ancient times. Metallic objects from Gaius. The La Mana caves in Ecuador have attracted the attention of not only archaeologists, but also fans of mysticism and ufology for many years. The story of the discovery of metal objects in these caves is shrouded in mystery and mysticism. According to legend, metal plates were discovered in La Mana with symbols engraved on them that resemble modern diagrams, maps, and even technical drawings. These findings became the basis for hypotheses about the existence of an unknown civilization in the distant past that possessed highly developed technologies, or about contacts between ancient people and extraterrestrial beings. Supporters of these theories argue that such complex and detailed symbols could not have been created with primitive tools and should indicate more advanced knowledge. Some researchers even suggest that the plates could have served as star maps or technological instructions left by aliens. However, most scientists are very skeptical about these findings. There is no conclusive evidence that the metal objects from La Mana are indeed ancient. Some experts point to possible traces of modern metalworking and the inconsistency of these artifacts with styles and technologies known in ancient Ecuador. Moreover, there is a lack of reliable dating and context for the objects, which further undermines their authenticity. Archaeologists believe that these artifacts may have been created in a later period, perhaps as part of a hoax or to attract tourists. Thus, despite the fascinating and mysterious story of the metal objects from the caves of La Mana, their origin and meaning remain in question. The story of the caves of La Mana is an example of how myths and legends can intertwine with reality, creating fascinating but often unreliable stories about our past. Ancient Neolithic settlement. I completely missed one small country which, due to its geographical location, has a very ancient history. Archaeologists have discovered the oldest settlement in North Macedonia dating back to the early Neolithic. Judging by radiocarbon analysis, the oldest layers of the Vlaho site date back to 6,410–6,240 BC. Not later than the 10th millennium BC, this region, which was called the Fertile Crescent, became famous for a very important event. During this period, a very important moment in the history of mankind began: Neolithization. This is the period when people stopped hunting and gathering and began to grow everything themselves. That is, agriculture and animal breeding appeared. Later, Neolithization began in Turkey, Greece, and throughout the Balkan Peninsula. And 5,000 years ago, the entire continent was already engaged in agriculture and animal breeding. To determine the age of the buildings found here, scientists used accelerator mass spectrometry. For dating, they selected samples of charred grains of cereals. The earliest date obtained showed that the settlement existed around 6,410–6,240 BC. As you can see, even small grains are important to archaeologists, by which they can find out the age of an entire settlement. And the next find is even smaller than grains of cereals, but no less valuable. Ancient Roman relief depicting a god. In the north of England, not far from the defensive wall of Hadrian, there was a fortified military camp, Vindolanda. It was built back in 85 AD to defend against the Celtic tribes of the Picts and Brigantes from Scotland. The fort existed until the 4th century AD, and at this place, amateur archaeologists found a sculptural relief depicting a naked man with a spear next to a horse or donkey. Archaeologists have been excavating here for more than 100 years, and during this time they have found thousands of artifacts, and the unique ones are exhibited in the British Museum. A few years ago, 25 wooden writing tablets dating back to the 1st, 2nd centuries of our era were found there, which are comparable in importance to Novgorod birchbark letters. Excellent preservation was achieved thanks to the clay soil. Now you know that sands, clays, and swamps are the best places to preserve artifacts.
If you want to leave something for your descendants or add work to archaeologists in the future, then bury it in clay, in sand, or in a swamp, and we will return to the study of the ancient plate. According to archaeologists, usually when people are depicted naked, this indicates their belonging to the gods. It is not customary to draw an ordinary cavalry warrior next to a horse without pants. This man has a spear in his hands. The spear was the main attribute of the god of war, Mars. However, some features of the head look like wings, and this is more like the god of travel, Mercury. The horse and donkey were also often painted next to Mercury. But most of all, archaeologists like to interpret the finds according to the place of their discovery. Near this place was an ancient cavalry barracks. The locals could portray an unknown god who had the characteristics of Mars and Mercury. But if archaeologists fail to find something similar in the future, then this image of a god can be attributed to an artist's mistake. It's good that these amateur archaeologists were not fined, like our next heroes, also from Britain.
The Holy Grail of the Nazis. This artifact has become increasingly popular over time, especially in the context of research into the esoteric beliefs of the Nazi regime. It is true that a number of senior Nazi leaders, including Himmler, were interested in the occult and mystical traditions. However, it is necessary to understand that most of the information on this topic is based on myths and guesses. However, there is a version that the Nazis were actually looking for the Holy Grail in the hope of using its mythical properties for their own purposes. In combination with archaeological expeditions organized by the Ahnenerbe SS Research Institute, this version becomes even more interesting. Some historians claim that one of the goals of Nazi expeditions to Tibet and other regions was to search for relics, including the Grail. However, there is no clear evidence for this. There is also an opinion that the Grail could be located in southern France, in the Cathar region, and that the Nazis carried out excavations there. This myth has been further inflated by popular culture, especially movies and books. A number of works depict Nazis pursuing sacred relics, including the Grail, to gain supernatural power or justify their ideology. Scientific and historical research on the topic proves that while the Nazis were indeed interested in the occult and mysticism, most of these claims are based on myth. However, the idea that the Nazis may have been searching for the Holy Grail has become one of the most recognizable and disturbing themes in modern pop culture. Fragment of the multiplication table. An archaeological discovery made in the city of Jingzhou in the Chinese province of Hubei turned out to be a real discovery for the history of mathematics. In one of the ancient tombs, which is more than 2,300 years old, thousands of bamboo sheets were found on which records related to mathematics, literature, medicine, and animal husbandry were recorded. These sheets, used for writing before the invention of paper, contain more than 30,000 characters. One of the most significant discoveries were fragments containing the oldest known multiplication table. The bamboo texts demonstrate basic mathematical operations. 5 times 7 equals 35, 4 times 7 equals 28, 3 times 7 equals 21. These cheat sheets date from the Warring States period, which preceded the unification of China under Emperor Qin Shi Huang and the founding of the Qin Dynasty. Ritual axe 4,500 years old. In China, in the city of Wuxi, archaeologists have discovered an ancient ritual weapon, an engraved axe that is 4,500 years old. The axe belongs to the Liangzhu culture, one of the most developed cultures in China at that time. This culture lived in the Yangtze River Delta, but when the floods occurred, the people of Liangzhu were forced to leave their capital and settlements. This led to their complete extinction around 2300 BC. Scientists have found 329 stone tools, 73 stone and bone arrows, and many other ceramic and jade artifacts. The most interesting is the axe, on which images of tigers, patterns of clouds, and birds are engraved on both sides. The axe was found on a sacrificial platform and shows signs of wear and damage. Scientists believe that the axe was not used in battles, but in rituals and ceremonies to symbolize power. Liu Baoshan, head of the local archaeological institute, said the patterns on the axe were made with a harder stone tool. This is the first tiger engraved axe found in the region. Now we will dive into history even deeper and find out what our ancestors ate more than 100,000 years ago. Pazyryk pile carpet. The discovery of the Prehistoric carpet in 1949 in one of the mounds of the ancient Prehistoric culture on the territory of the Altai Republic became a real sensation. Not only is it the oldest known pile carpet, but it is also a priceless historical artifact that demonstrates the excellence of the art of the time. The find was made by an expedition of the Institute of Archaeology of the USSR Academy of Sciences under the leadership of Sergei Rudenko. The study of the mounds of the Prehistoric culture began in the 19th century. After discovering the carpet, archaeologists conducted a thorough stylistic and artistic analysis of it. Everything from yarn to weaving techniques was studied. Comparison of the details of the carpet with the known ornaments of art objects of that time allowed us to draw a conclusion about its non-Altai and most likely Western or Central Asian origin. Rudenko also noted that already in the Achaemenid era, pile carpets were produced in Persia, which were used not only in everyday life, but also as a symbol of power and wealth, which emphasizes their significance in the culture and art of that time. Mysterious accessory from the future. Archaeologists have discovered wall carvings depicting objects similar to modern handbags. Some of these images are about 12,000 years old. The earliest were found in Turkey in the ruins of the megalithic temple of Göbekli Tepe, where strange images are engraved on the columns of the ancient temple. Similar motifs have been discovered in Mexico, Iraq, and South America, raising many questions about the possible use of such objects by ancient civilizations. Although the images resemble handbags or clutches, experts believe the ancient ruins are more likely to depict baskets. Some believe that the concept of a handbag may have been invented by ancient civilizations. The first modern bag appeared in 1841 in England, created by Samuel Parkinson. The problem is that the Göbekli Tepe temple was built in 9000 BC, and its builders could hardly have known about such an accessory. Another ancient example of a handbag was found in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs written about 5,000 years ago, where the gods hold a small square object symbolizing prosperity. Archaeologists have indeed found remains of baskets and tool bags used by the ancient Egyptians, but they cannot yet say for sure what is depicted in the hieroglyphs. Similar discoveries were made in Iraq, among the ruins of an Assyrian palace built between 883 and 859 BC. Which depicts a genie with wings holding what appears to be a handbag. Historian David Miano believes that these figures, called Apkallu, were minor deities who carried water buckets made from sacred date palms rather than purses. Ancient buckets similar to the engravings were actually found in Iraq. Similar motifs have also been found in Mexico among Toltec ruins, where giant statues hold objects resembling handbags. These statues were created around 750 AD. Rare coin in Jerusalem. Israeli archaeologists, during excavations near Jerusalem, discovered a unique artifact, part of an ancient silver coin, the age of which is estimated at 2550 years. This find represents one of only 6 coins of this type found in Israel. The coin belongs to a group of very early coins minted in the 6th-5th centuries BC outside Israel in ancient Greece, Cyprus, and Turkey. This artifact was created in an era when coins were just beginning to be used, and its discovery provides important information about the transition from the weighing of silver to the use of coins as a means of payment. The coin discovered was deliberately cut in two, indicating that it was used as a weighted piece of silver in the 4th century BC. Although coins were already in circulation at that time. One side of the coin shows a pattern made with a square die. This suggests that coins with raised images appeared later thanks to the development of more complex minting technologies. Amateur searchers have found a super treasure. I recently told about one case when amateur archaeologists found a treasure in the UK, and instead of telling officials about it and getting a reward, they decided to sell it themselves on the black market. Thus, they paid for it and ended up in prison. In today's story, archaeologists have acted wiser. Treasure hunters found 600 medieval gold and silver coins in Buckinghamshire, which were valued at £150 thousands. At the moment, this treasure is considered the largest in the UK in the last decade. The authorities have declared it a national treasure, and amateur archaeologists are now entitled to a good reward. They called it Hambledon Treasure. Usually the searchers were able to find old cartridges, thimbles, and other small metal objects. But at some point they found a coin, continued to dig and found another coin, and so on. In 4 days, they unearthed 627 coins, including 12 ultra-rare full gold coins from the Black Death era. During the excavations, the men took turns sleeping in a tent near the pit so that random passers-by would not take the booty. The owner of the territory where the treasure was discovered will also receive a small part of the reward from the government.
Sacrifice in Germany. Fertility rites were performed in Germany 4,800 years ago, and today we already know that they sacrificed. In Halberstadt, archaeologists found a well with the skeletons of various animals: bulls, dogs, and hares. This happened a long time ago, at a time when people lived among nature and appreciated it. They wanted the land to be fertile. They loved everything that surrounded them. And most importantly, they believed that if animals were sacrificed, the gods would help them and the harvest would be good. The well belonged to an ancient culture that originated in the lands of modern Poland and then moved to Germany. Scientists think that people dug a well specifically for these rites. First, the bones of 4 bulls were found in the well, and then whole skeletons: a dog, hares, and another bull. This suggests that people already knew how to breed animals. Hares, which were also sacrificed, are considered very prolific. Hares and rabbits can produce offspring several times a year. This once again confirms that the well was used for fertility rites. And next to the well, archaeologists found a stone tomb. Perhaps someone important from this ancient society was buried there. Tutankhamun was not disabled. Today we have on our agenda one of the most mysterious pharaohs of ancient Egypt, Tutankhamun. Many of you have probably heard that Tutankhamun was a weak and sick boy who had difficulty moving due to bone diseases. But recent research and reconstruction of his face has led us to a startling discovery. That may not be the case at all. When archaeologists opened Tutankhamun's tomb, they found 130 sticks that they thought helped him move. But Egyptologists at the Cheltenham Science Festival are now arguing that this may have been an incorrect assumption. Imagine, the so-called clubfoot could be the result of the mummification process itself. What we thought were signs of weakness could actually be distortions caused by resin and tight bandaging. Sophia Aziz, a mummy researcher, is sure that in fact there is no evidence that Tutankhamun was disabled. Those sticks that were found on him could just be a symbol of his royalty. And although the mummy of Tutankhamun is missing 1 toe on his left foot, scientists suggest that it could have been lost in the process of moving the body or even taken as a souvenir. And these canes that were found on him were not assistants in movement, but status symbols. They depict his enemies, which gives us reason to think that Tutankhamun was not a wimp, but a battle-hardened warrior. Since the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, scientists have continued to explore its contents, and each time they make more and more new discoveries. Today we know that Tutankhamun ascended the throne in 1336 BC when he was only 9 years old and died at 19. But he was not just a pharaoh, he was a warrior. Leather armor and weapons were found in his tomb, which confirms this fact. And how many more such discoveries await us, we can only guess. Increasingly, archaeologists are studying the same find again, and it turns out that the previous conclusions were completely false. Until that time, many films and cartoons were shot in which Tutankhamun was depicted as a disabled person, but what now? Is it worth trusting archaeologists after that? Write your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.
Lost Bible Translation Fragment. Austrian scientists have made a remarkable discovery in the Vatican Library, a new chapter of the Bible and a translation of the Gospel of Matthew dating back to 1750. The text, invisible to the naked eye, was discovered using ultraviolet photography. The discovery was part of a research project aimed at recovering texts erased or rewritten by scribes between the 4th and 12th centuries AD. Manuscripts of this kind, called palimpsests, were created repeatedly on already used material. This was due to a shortage of writing materials. With the help of ultraviolet light, it was possible to reveal the lost texts. Among the 74 manuscripts recovered was one particularly valuable, an ancient version of the Bible, 100 years older than the earliest Greek translations, including the Codex Sinaiticus. The new text expands on the famous verse about Jesus' disciples plucking the ears of corn and adding they rubbed them in their hands and ate them. This discovery is an important contribution to the understanding of ancient Syriac texts and the study of ancient writing.
Ceramic figurines from Mexico.
In 1944, thousands of ceramic figurines were discovered in the Mexican city of Acámbaro, which have since sparked heated debate among scientists. These figurines depict humans, animals, and even dinosaurs, which has led to speculation about possible contact between ancient civilizations and dinosaurs, or the existence of a civilization with incredible knowledge of the ancient world. Some supporters of alternative theories even hypothesize extraterrestrial origins or influences. However, the authenticity of the Acámbaro figurines is seriously questioned by most scientists. Many researchers believe that these artifacts may be modern fakes created for attention-grabbing or commercial gain. The lack of reliable dating and archaeological context increases skepticism about their authenticity. 10,000-year-old chewing gum. 10,000 years ago in what is now Sweden, a group of teenagers chewed birch tar, similar to children chewing gum today. They could not even imagine that in the future, scientists would analyze their chewing remains and find out many interesting facts about their diet, lifestyle, and even health. 3 pieces of birch pitch used as glue in the Stone Age were found in the 1990s at a site called Husby Cleve. Microbial DNA analysis of the resin showed high levels of bacteria associated with gum disease, such as Treponema denticola and Streptococcus aeruginosus. The study of these samples showed that the ancient teenagers suffered from caries and periodontal disease and also ate deer, trout, hazelnuts, and processed fox and wolf fur. Scientists have also found traces of birds and other animals, indicating their use as food and the processing of bones into tools. Traces of mistletoe were found in the gums of the specimens, suggesting the plant's possible use in medicine or as a poison for arrowheads. The discovery provides a unique insight into the lives of hunter-gatherers on the west coast of Scandinavia 9,700 years ago, allowing us to learn about their diet and dental problems. And we are only talking about very old chewing gum that children chewed. And thanks to modern technologies, they can already tell so much about the lifestyle of people who lived 12,000 years ago. Unique type of DNA in alien mummies. 3-fingered mummies have been discovered in Peru, establishing themselves as something beyond our world. The creators of the documentary, Serena DC and Michael Mazzola, announced the presentation of unique evidence of the existence of humanoids. The remains found in the mountain mine, according to documentarians, are not a fake and contain DNA that is not similar to the known forms. American scientists in Mexico and Peru have conducted research, the results of which refute the claims of the Peruvian authorities about mummies as a tourist attraction. According to the filmmakers, the discovery could rewrite the history of mankind, becoming comparable to the discovery of the Shroud of Christ or the Ark of the Covenant. The documentarians are convinced of the need for scientific DNA analysis to understand the origins of creatures that are more than 1,000 years old and whose DNA is 30% unknown, indicating possible genetic manipulation. The film suggests that the mummies could be evidence of a new species or even extraterrestrial origin. The creators plan to show images and research results live from the laboratory, calling for a serious scientific analysis of the discovered remains. Stone phallus in Spain. Get ready for a fascinating story about how archaeologists in Spain discovered a secret item of warriors of the past, which at first surprised researchers. I'm talking about a stone penis that turned out to be a grindstone. Archaeologists were at the excavations near the Mira Tower in the city of Rio de Vigo. This tower was demolished in 1476 during the Irmandino Rebellion, when the peasants rebelled against the Spanish aristocracy. But here's the interesting thing. They came across a stone 15 centimeters long, which, as I said, was in the shape of a penis. In general, such a phallic image is often found in prehistoric symbolism, but is rarely found in artifacts of the Middle Ages. So the researchers were surprised. And then it turns out that this stone is not just a stone. It was a grindstone used to sharpen weapons before battles during the Irmandino uprising. After all, not only modern people love everything stylish and with humor, our ancestors were also not without a sense of humor. The researchers note that the stone reflects the symbolic connection between violence, weapons, and masculinity. Roman sarcophagus. Half a kilometer from the sea in the Gaza Strip, archaeologists discovered an ancient sarcophagus. The ancient Roman cemetery was found in 2022. Its area is 3,500 square meters. And for the entire period of excavations, French and Palestinian archaeologists managed to find 85 individual and collective burials. The sarcophagus was sent to the laboratory for further study. This will take at least 2-3 months. The good news is that it remained intact. Artifacts and burials of the Roman, Byzantine, and Canaanite eras have already been found in this region. The finds in these places are amazing. Last year, a Palestinian farmer discovered the head of a 4,500-year-old statue of the Canaanite goddess Anat, while another farmer found a Byzantine-era mosaic in his garden. But these finds are not as ancient as those that I will talk about later. 19th century Thumbelina. The story began in 1841 in Massachusetts in an ordinary family. A girl was born there who certainly pleased her parents with an excellent appetite and was completely healthy. But at some point, the parents noticed that something was wrong with the girl. She completely stopped growing. The doctors only shrugged and declared that the girl was absolutely healthy, but most likely she would forever remain the size of a child. Its dimensions were comparable to a child 1.5-2 years old. Parents accepted this feature of the girl and raised her as if everything was fine with her. As a child, she planned to become a teacher, but her cousin invited her to participate in the midget show where she became their queen. She was very popular. She constantly sang and danced. Such a hobby gave her great pleasure and brought good money. At some point, the famous impresario Phineas Taylor Barnum drew attention to the girl Lavinia. He invited the girl to his place, where she attracted the attention of another midget who even proposed, but Lavinia refused because the guy was 7 years younger than her. She gave her heart to another admirer of hers named Charles Stratton. In 1863, the couple got married. The ceremony was attended by former boyfriend George Nutt and the youngest daughter of the Warren family, Millie, who was also born small. Tickets for the ceremony cost $50, and there were about 10,000 guests. After the necessary time, the wife began to appear on the show with the baby. She never said that it was her child, but she did not deny it either. It turned out that all this was a PR of impresario Barnum. That way, he warmed up the crowd. Every time they came to another city, he, to put it mildly, rented the child in one of the local shelters, and after the show, he gave the child back. Lavinia never got her own child. This was influenced by the case with her younger sister. Little Minnie was even shorter than her sister by 10 centimeters, but she married a taller man. Happiness was not long. A year later, she died from complications during childbirth. Later, Lavinia faced the death of her husband and already wanted to quit her shows, but the accumulated money was not enough for her to meet her old age. She continued her tour and met a new love there. Later, the couple returned to their hometown where they opened their own store. The Queen of the Lilliput died in 1919, having lived to the age of 78. Rate this video with your thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for your views. Bye, everyone.